Our next speaker will be Bob Behnke, who is president of, I'll spell it, CENTTS Incorporated. He's from Beaverton, Oregon. He is an expert in information technology, operations research, and intelligence transportation system. His area is consulting. He's the founder and president of Community Enhancements via New Transportation and Telecommunications Services. He has more than 40 years experience in this area. He also has more than 25 years of experience in ITS, and frankly, I didn't know it was around that much ago, specializing in advanced public transportation systems and advanced traveler information systems. He has received U.S. and Canadian patents on key concepts of smart jeepney and smart community systems. And here he is. Please join me in welcoming him.
Thanks. Good. I want to have a little bit of a provocative title. And the reason for the blank space in between them is that there'll be some inserts between those two phrases that talk about a couple of new technologies that are going to be available to accomplish this. I borrowed these slides I put together from a number of sources, and I have to give the credit for the next one here to Frank Moretti, who was working with the Highway User Group. I saw a name on the program someplace, so I figured I'd just throw it in. And this was done about 20 years ago. And things have not changed too much since that period of time. The target audience for this presentation is some of you developers. I'm going to show you how in the next couple of years you can change your past, existing, and future development projects into enhanced transit-oriented development projects. And for those folks who are local politicians or state politicians, I'm going to show you how not only can you reduce traffic congestion, but you can provide mobility to that 30% of the population who doesn't drive because they're too old, too young, not rich enough, or they have physical handicaps that prevent them from doing that. And another 30% of the people who would use public transportation to get to work if you get them there faster than they can by driving themselves or in their own vehicles. Plan A versus Plan B. I got into this transportation business about 25 years ago when the governor of Hawaii asked me to do a little work for him. The mayor wanted to build a rail transit system, and Plan A was to build this rail system, and Plan B was some combination of bus and paratransit. And one of the tasks he gave me was to travel around to all the cities in the United States and Canada that had built new rail systems over the past 25 years, or since World War II, and to look what promised and what was delivered. And I produced a report for him, and essentially came out with the same conclusion that Don Kirkle did a little bit later. And it says virtually every rail project had higher costs than originally projected and lower ridership. And the cost of the new transit passenger were very much off. As a matter of fact, we have one project in Oregon that connects the light rail system that connects Beaverton, where I live, to Hillsborough, where Intel is located. That costs approximately $150,000 to take one car off the road for a year. Anyway, Plan A. Woody Allen was invited to give a speech at a college commencement and says, you know, we're at the crossroads. Plan A leads to despair and utter hopelessness. Plan B leads to total extinction. Let us pray we have the wisdom to choose correctly. And the choices that we have between Plan A, rail, and bus paratransit, they're both no-win situations because neither of them can make it. The rail project is not appropriate when you have an increasing amount of suburbanization, and the bus and paratransit is just simply too expensive, and you don't get all the pork barrel economic development work that you get by building a rail project. So I essentially dropped out of the business here a couple of years ago after looking at this and saying, you know, I didn't like this idea of Plan A and Plan B would go in. And then about a year ago, I started seeing some new technology coming on board something that's called Wi-Fi. Some people see it called WiMAX, but it's something called municipal wireless systems. The primary purpose of putting them in is for first responders, police, fire, ambulance. And we have one in Central Oregon, in Umatilla County. I don't think there's any place in Georgia that has a lower population density than Umatilla County. Okay? And they got money from the Homeland Security Administration to put this wireless internet system in because they're located next to an arsenal that's charged with destroying a lot of nerve gas and other kind of chemical weapons. And in the event of a catastrophe, they had to be able to evacuate people very easily and notify people that there was a problem. And they put this Wi-Fi system in, and as a byproduct, they let everybody have internet services in the county at no cost. The problem that we have in the transportation business, and public transit as well as highway, is we have peak loads. And it's very difficult to run any kind of a business, including public transportation, if you want to call it that, when you have these kind of peak loads. You have to get them balanced in some way. And one way you can do this on highway is by using some disincentives like higher prices if you're driving the roads. And in the transit area, it becomes a real problem when you have unions and work regulations and other things. And that's why our subsidies per transit trip have been escalating so badly. We really haven't been able to accommodate this. And one of the speakers that was invited over to Hawaii to make a presentation on why he didn't think rail would be a good project, a good idea for Hawaii, was Mel Weber of Berkeley, now Professor Emeritus of City and Regional Planning there. And his words were something like the following. Honolulu, we say Atlanta, problem is not a shortage of transportation resources. You have enough highways, you have enough automobiles, buses, vans, and other vehicles to transport everybody at the same time without congestion. The problem is you're not using these resources very well. And what I've been looking for is what kind of technologies will let us use our resources a little bit more wisely. Okay. The plan A that we normally have right now is to reduce traffic congestion, use maximize highway building. And this approach came from Joel Garrow. He was the guy who wrote Edge Cities, and he was invited to give a speech at the American Public Transit Association's annual meeting, I believe in San Antonio in the mid-90s. And it was very controversial because when he set up, he said, Plan A, maximize highway building to reduce congestion and mobility problems, is stupid. And the transit executives cheered wildly. Oops, I doing something wrong? Oh, there it is, okay. He said, however, Plan B, to maximize big box transit expansion, is equally stupid. And he recommended Plan C. Plan C was to use palm-top computers, cell phones, these new smart cell phones, and to form something he calls single-trip park rules. I call them smart jitneys, in order to take advantage of the inventory of empty seats that's running around the highways and try and complement and supplement whatever transportation resources you have out there on the highway already. Joel came out to speak in Oregon earlier this year, and I called him up and asked if I could get an appointment. In fact, we had breakfast together. At first, he wasn't particularly interested, but then I told him that his concept here, that I had the patents, U.S. and Canadian patents on some of the key concepts, and all of a sudden he came out and we got along very well. And he is not only an editor and a journalist for the Washington Post, he is a fellow at UC Berkeley and also at George Mason University. And not only did he write Edge Cities, he wrote two other bestsellers, The Tiny Nations of North America and something else. And he has a website, and I urge you to go to it sometime if you want to find more information. Or I have a 24-page document kind of summarizing in more detail on this report that if anybody gives me a business card, I'll be happy to email you, or I'll go over to the business center here, and anybody wants to pick up a copy and pay for the copy cost, it'll make it available to you. The approach that I want to take right now is, some of you folks have seen these slides already, is to look at what Germany did back in the 1980s and early 90s in order to include automobiles in ways of using improving traffic congestion. While we were having problems with bus and paratransit and rail systems in the United States, and I have a handout, you have a green sheet on your desk, or your table in front of you. One side of it is the obituary from the New York Times about a system they put in San Jose that failed because it attracted too many riders. It was a combination of dial-a-ride and bus. You could take dial-a-ride around your neighborhood. If you had to go to a different neighborhood, you take the bus there and you had to take dial-a-ride to your destination. And after 6 months, it went broke. The other side is a press release from a trade publication that says that this whole Silicon Valley area is now putting in one of these advanced Wi-Fi systems, not only to monitor traffic signals and to do a whole bunch of ITS-type applications and first responder type thing, but they're going to make wireless internet services available to everybody free at speeds that are about 4 times what you normally can get on dial-up. And if you want to have faster speeds and not have a commercial on the top, banner on the top, then you have to pay $10 a month or $8 a month, whatever the number is going to be. Let me talk about what they did in Germany. They installed kiosks at bus stops all over the 2 test cities. This one happens to be in this was in Wunstorf, Germany, up near Hanover, which is a rail commuter suburb. And the way the lady would request a ride on the bus was she would go to this kiosk, and all the bus stops are numbered, and a little prompt on the top would say, enter your destination code, and she would punch in the number of the bus stop she wanted to go to. It would say how many people are traveling together, and she said, mother, 2 kids. And then the next line says, do you have any special needs, wheelchair, baby chair, seeing eye dog, whatever, and enter that number. And that would go into a system. And then a vehicle would be dispatched to pick her up. A bus would be dispatched to pick her up. This is another kiosk that was done down in Friedrichshafen, somewhat bigger. This was 25 years ago. You can see this bus stop was number 34. And young Fritz here would now be going to a senior center instead of to college. He's aged considerably. My grandson pointed out that he is now officially a geezer because you can tell because he is wearing a wristwatch. The modern generation, the younger folks, don't wear wristwatches anymore because they use cell phones. And he obviously doesn't know how to use a text editing, clumsily pushing a much bigger button. So he is qualified now as a geezer. Anyway, enter your ride request. The next thing that happens is it would dispatch a big bus. I picked this one out for obvious reasons. And the big bus would be the first choice. It's already on the road, the driver's salary is already paid, and if we can deliver the person between point A and point B, assign that bus and tell the woman, look for a big red bus, Coca-Cola, number 44. The second one would be dispatch a minibus. This is one of the minibuses that they had. There were 2 other ones. There's something, there it is. This was a special one that could load people in wheelchairs from either rural areas where they had no sidewalks or in areas where they did have sidewalks. Another minibus, this yellow one, was a citizen bus where the county provides buses to senior citizen centers and stuff, and they get plugged into the system if they are going from to the bingo parlor or they're going to the dog track or whatever, where the senior citizens go, or casino. Maybe you don't have many Indian casinos in Germany, but they would be plugged into the system and have empty seats, and they would be incorporated as part of the system. So you have maxi buses and micro buses, and they also have something called minibuses. 4-passenger buses, no standing room, privately owned and privately operated under contract with the local taxi company. So when you request a ride on the roof bus area, you wouldn't know whether you're going to be picked up by a big bus, a minibus, or a microbus. Okay? It would depend on the time of day, it would depend on the weather, if there was a high school soccer game going on, whatever happened. And the beautiful part about this system is that when they put it in to replace the big box transit system schedule that they had beforehand. By the way, environmentalists hate the word big box transit, which means trains and buses. They have made big box such a dirty word with Walmarts and IKEA and other places that when you start applying it to transit, it really gets them upset. So maybe that's one of the value lessons you'll learn from this. The common ingredient of all of these buses, privately or publicly owned, was a little device up here that told the driver which bus stop to go to next. Didn't give them a whole big printed schedule, so that they could do insertions dynamically. The driver would never know whether the reservation was made an hour ago, a day ago, or 5 minutes ago. The bus driver gets, where do I go next, or where do I pick up the passenger? And just to give you an idea of the size of it, the card on the bottom is a little bigger than a standard credit card. I put one on 2 minutes, okay. Anyway, this device is going to be about the size of some of the new palm-top computers that are going to be coming out in the not-too-distant future. That'll be about the size of a paperback book. The types of services that are available, as I mentioned before, bus, minibus, microbus, and they also plug trains and trams into this thing, into buses. And they can operate in fixed route, which everybody understands, dial-a-ride, which everybody understands, and they had something called route deviation. Route deviation is a little bit different, and let me explain how this operates. Suppose the bus starts, it knows it's going to start at number 1, and it knows it's going to end up in the extreme right there. What's that? Bus stop number 9, I guess. And it'll proceed on that. It won't go to bus stop number 8 or to bus stop number 7 unless somebody has pressed a request on the kiosk to go to those stops. Now, we have been using a variation of this in the United States for many years. The origin and destination of things. Okay? And for proper incentive, the driver is prepared to go up and pick up passengers and deliver them en route to his ultimate destination with the proper kind of incentive. We call them a carpool. Okay? And there's no reason why private carpools, if they were properly regulated, and details can be plugged in a little bit later on, that could be plugged into the system, into the German-type system, in order to provide a new kind of service that supplement things, particularly during peak commuting hours, when you have that tremendous cost associated with public transit services and the traffic congestion problems. That could be privately owned taxi as well as some private individuals who are part of some kind of a community organization. If you look in the United States, I think volunteer firemen outnumber regular firemen something like 2 to 1. And maybe, in terms of public transportation drivers, smart jitney drivers will outnumber 10 years from now or 15 years ago now, will outnumber regular transit operators by a similar ratio. I inserted this term Wi-Fi and WiMAX networks in there because these things are starting to go up. I tried to attend a conference here in Atlanta about a month and a half ago to talk about municipal wireless networks. You have 2 of the national leaders here, a company called Civitum and another company called Earthlink, that in Atlanta here. The conference was sold up, it was booked up. You couldn't get in, okay? And they're involved in these things all over the place. And it seems to me that this represents a very interesting opportunity for this group. Rather than being on the defense, the idea of protecting, preserving the American dream, maybe it should be preserving and enhancing the American dream. And maybe the technology should be, the conference should be in San Jose next year when you can get demonstrations of this technology, or Umatilla County, Oregon, where you can do it today. And you can see how this kind of technology can work in order to enable you to make every development a transit-oriented development. Devices will be mass-produced. The way you're going to reduce the cost on the German system is you're going to use those little devices instead of the kiosk. You don't have to build kiosks anymore. You will use a mass-produced commercial product like a BlackBerry or a Trio in order to do the kind of dispatching. So it'll be much cheaper. If you want to talk to Dale Evans, she has a new BlackBerry, and she can show you how that would work. There'll be some modifications to that. And the way you would enter it is when your screen comes up and say you want to ride, you put your trip code in, trip number 1, home to work as quickly as possible, and it's all been pre-stored just like an auto dialer, and you get a ride sometime within the next 6 or 7 minutes. Measure of effectiveness. Not how many people ride smart jitneys, but how much single occupant vehicle use and traffic congestion are reduced. Okay? Because this is the feeder service to the rail. The feeder service is to express buses. The backup for people who would like to drive and walk, drive their bikes and walk, and other modes. So you take them all together in a synergistic combination, and that's where the measure of effectiveness is going to be. Thank you.